Hey everybody, it's Bust with Battles with Bust number 331, and today we're going to be doing battle with Fiora Vayne P&Z. And so this will be our last video before the big rotation hits, or I should say our last gameplay video. I usually do a patch notes review on the day the patch notes come out that then gets released on the day that the upcoming balance patch happens, but I thought that this would be a fun one to take in to our last day of laddering and see if we can't get a nice little ladder climb in before the beta season is all said and done. And so, before we talk more about Fiora Vayne, there has been another set of spoilers. We have a little bit more than we usually discuss, since again, this will be the last video we do until those patch notes drop. And so, we're not going to wait on champions or anything, and we'll just dive on in to what's available here. And so, it's all going to be variety cards, and these are all pretty interesting and pretty strong. Over here to the left, Form Up, as we've seen Sharp Sight be an exceptionally competitive, viable card over the past, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years, how long that dumb card has been out. I have to assume that Form Up is also going to be okay. I do like that there is a bit of distinction in the combat tricks within Demacia to where you can spend 1 mana on a card like Radiant Striker Catch. You can do a little bit better with a card like Form Up, getting 2/2 for 2. You can do a little bit better with a card like Riposte, giving a unit +3 attack and barrier. And you can do a little bit better than that with a card like Back to Back. And then you can do a little bit better than that with a card like the thing that says your unit can't die. And so I think it's very fitting and very strong that Demacia has a wide range of combat tricks that they have access to, and Form Up will fit right in there. It's kind of in that space of, do I want to play Ranger's Resolve? Do I want to play Form Up, or do I want to play both? And I think, losing out on the ability to block elusives is relevant, but that doesn't stop Form Up from being a playable card. And so I was thinking of this and seeing this and being like, oh man, Kai'Sa's not going to get any bonuses. The poor thing. That's too bad. if you don't remember, with the initial release of Kai'Sa, you could play Sharp Sight onto a unit, and then the Can Block Elusives ability counted as a evolve trigger, and so it was exceptionally strong with Kai'Sa. Don't have to worry about that with Form Up. That kind of ability isn't here. Up next, we have Search Warrant, this 4-mana removal spell. Another very interesting one from Demacia. I'm surprised that we haven't seen as much of the capture ability, and I suspect that we'll continue to see more of that. I guess that's just going to be something that we see out of Demacia. I'm curious if we start to see the strike-based removal removed, or if Demacia maybe only gets fight-based removal as something comparing, say, single combat compared to concerted strike to the capture kind of cards like Search Warrant. It's just another space that Riot has access to, kind of defining what factions are supposed to be good at, and Demacia has been the capture faction. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe like Demacia hang on to the strike-based abilities, and then the fight-based abilities get moved to another faction. I don't know entirely how that would work out, but I do think it's nice and interesting to see additional removal and additional flavors of removal to come in, really kind of define what these factions are supposed to be good at. But there are other interesting things that you can use with Search Warrant. You do get access to landmark removal with this, which can be quite interesting and powerful, and not something that we see a ton of. People typically don't want to play landmark removal on its own, but having it tied in with a real removal spell does make it more interesting. And then it also has the ability to capture your own units. We haven't seen a ton of usage in this type of ability, but it is worth knowing, right? If, say, we're in some kind of big combat, we have a really high-valued champion on the board, and then we're out there blocking, opponent plays a vengeance on our big high-valued unit, we can then Search Warrant it away, have our unit die in combat, then the champion comes back in. Whatever that kind of sequence is there, it's a bit on the fringes, but those fringe plays are what really can kind of push up a win rate a couple percentage points and make it to be a real contender. And so interesting to keep in mind when this says things capture a unit or an ally, or I'm sorry, captures a unit or an ally captures a landmark. And so that means you can target your own units with that. Up next, the Thrall Bulwark, another interesting space, just in kind of defining what units are good at, what factions get, these bigger units, and I think it's kind of interesting. Again, I mentioned in the last video, we started to see a lot of growth in this 3-drop space to where we're starting to see a lot of 7-stat 3-drops, even with abilities now, and so we have seen an absolute ton of 4-health units. That is a real important breakpoint as we want to look at cards like Legion Rearguard, all of these 3/2s for 2 mana, having the format slow down a little bit with these kind of meteor units is going to be interesting and see how it plays out. And so I can't make a real strong final assessment on how this is going to go, but as we've seen here with this recent meta, to where Loyal Badger Bear comes in and just shuts down a gigantic chunk of the early units, I suspect seeing some of these bigger units come on board are going to kind of indicate a little bit slower of a format. And you folks out there that really enjoy a control deck, I think should be quite happy seeing units like the Thrall Bulwark and then an upcoming Stellacorn that we'll be seeing. They're just so punishing to that 3-attack unit space, which we've seen kind of dominate the metas for so long. Curious to see how this plays out. But I don't take damage from allied spells or skills is another kind of interesting ability. We've seen the Vladimir style abilities roll through the Battle Scars abilities, if you will. And so it's nice to see another extension of that. I think Vladimir is supposed to get rotated. That was one of the champions. I believe Riot mentioned that he was going to be rotated back with the initial announcement, but there's still a bunch of other interesting usages for the Thrall Bulwark. It doesn't take damage from Avalanche, doesn't take damage from Ice Shards. You can kind of easily come up with some ways to deal damage to your own units to where this thing will survive. Over here on the right side, the Frostcoat Cub, a 2/3 for 2 mana that can be played in big mode for 6. Another very interesting one. This is a card that would have been a limited superstar if we still got to play limited formats. Having these cards that are fantastic early and fantastic late was a staple of being a expedition or a draft powerhouse. As will this see play in Constructed now, that's kind of up in the air. Like things like Alpha Wildclaw have seen some fringe play. We have seen a lot of usage of the big Overwhelm stack, and having a unit that can be reasonable in the late game, but just a curve filler early could potentially fill in that space. And so I don't want to immediately discount the strength of the Frostcoat Cub, given that Overwhelm is such a powerful ability, and the way that you have to look to win a lot of your games is through either an Overwhelm, an Elusive, or a Rally. Always gives a little bit of additional value to these cards, but up front it kind of feels like curve filler at best. A card that may be playable here as the cards rotate out and the format is small, but as additional sets are released, it could very easily be overwhelmed in card quality. So, interesting set there. On to the second page, we start to see the Shadow Isles and Targon's cards. A couple of removal spells coming in from Shadow Isles. The Culling Strike replacement, if you will, in Soul Harvest lets you kill a follower with little power or spend a bunch of mana and kill a champion with little power. Again, this is a kind of interesting space to see Shadow Isles removal move towards. We can look at Eradication as well, where you kill all units with 3 or less power. Things like Quietus being around, also really focusing in on the stat line of the opposing units. And so very interesting to see the Shadow Isles removal move this way. I would suspect that we're going to start to see things like Black Spear and Grasp of the Undying move out. Riot has already said Vile Feast is going to be moving out of the format, and I'm curious if Shadow Isles is really going to focus in on this kind of conditional removal, and if Riot also views, say, unconditional removal like Vengeance, maybe that goes, but then Shadow Isles looks towards cards like Crumble as to where it fits into that theme of sacrificing something for a powerful effect. I'm curious how that's all going to play out. I don't think Vengeance was on the chopping block. I think it's a card that's probably pretty healthy for the game, but I'm curious to see how much Shadow Isles gets pushed towards this size matters role, and how much they get that kind of big Vengeance-y style removal spell. But otherwise, the other, I think, interesting take with these is we do see these units that really care about having 3 attack. We have seen, again, in that 3-drop space, a very big push towards larger units, 4/4s and 4/3s and 3/4s and the like. And I'm curious how these 3 power or less kind of cards are actually going to stack up, given that it looks like a lot of those mid-game plays are going to start being a lot bigger. So it'll be interesting to see. These are, of course, playable. It is kind of bad having them be at slow speed, but I think the raw power that you get out of a card like Eradication, and then the versatility you get out of a card like Soul Harvest will make up for these. They may not be cards that you're looking to play 3 of in your deck, but I think almost every Shadow Isles deck will be reasonably happy to play 1 copy of Soul Harvest, very much in the same way they're very happy to play cards like Quietus. And so over to the right, Cosmic Youngling, the Legion Rearguard lovers of the world are not excited about Cosmic Youngling running around. And I'm curious to see if this card is able to pop off. Like historically, 1-power units have really needed something to awaken their powers and make them be good. Typically, healing isn't the way to go for that, but I think this is, can kind of fit right in with any stall deck. You don't really have to look towards Soraka or Tom Kench just as a reasonable early value play that maybe prevents 7 or 8 damage across the game. Can definitely buy you some time until you can get your Aurelian Souls on the board and the like. And so, interesting unit. It's not a card I'm particularly interested in playing, but it is right up there in the mix of cards that we're just really gonna bitch about and complain about over the course of the next few months. As a Legion Rearguard lover of the world, I see cards printed like this and just go, oh fuck. What are you doing to me, Riot? I must have pissed off the intern or something for him to be pushing forth ideas like this. And so we'll see how it shapes up. Last but not least, down here at the end with the Fallen Star, deals 4 to an enemy that attacked this round or is stunned. And I think this is, again, a fair space to see. It really defines what Targon is good at in terms of removal, and they aren't. And that's completely fine, right? I love to see us moving in this space to where the removal is all kind of like generic and overlappy, and all the units are kind of generic and overlappy. I really like this space we're moving towards. To where you get a bit of definition of what a faction is supposed to be good at. And Targon, not supposed to be good at removal. They should be able to do something, right? Whether or not that's just stun units or have some kind of weird interactivity. And Fallen Star is it. And saying Targon should be bad at removal, that's completely fair. And I think this really kind of sets the tone as what we should see Targon removal being. And so, for the next set of spoilers, just a last little bit to go. We got some Bilgewater spoilers here, and Pocket Picker is most certainly going to be a format staple. Any deck playing the coin is going to auto-include 3 copies of this. Even decks that aren't super interested in the coin will probably be interested in the Picket Pocker, the Pocket Picker. There we go. It's just a card that's essentially free. Right, we see so much play of cards like Shell Shocker these days. If you say, it's a unit that basically comes down for free, that's a pretty good deal. The Pocket Picker essentially being a free unit to a degree, but also having this element that you can just discard or activate effects like Nami or whatever you're looking to have in that sense. It's just going to all around be quite good. Here in the middle, Mad Ol' Babs, when you refill mana, grant me +1/0 for each mana refilled. This one I'm not entirely certain on. It's a card that it's so bad in the late game that it's really kind of hard to evaluate. And so you can see it being good early. I imagine it's fairly easy to refill 2 or 3 mana in the early game and then have this be a fairly undercosted 3/3 or 4/3. But it starts to really ring in as to like, what if I draw this on turn 7? Do I actually get to refill any mana at that point of the game? Or if I am going to be really refilling mana at that point of the game, is that when I'm just kind of in OTK mode, when I'm just going to try and finish off the opponent? And so it'll take a little bit of time to tell. I'm leaning towards Mad Ol' Babs being towards the bad end of the spectrum as opposed to the good. But, being able to give a unit like +8 attack and overwhelm with it is something that can potentially make some really big swingy plays. And so it's, again, tough for me to evaluate her. I feel like it's not going to be very good, but I do put the little asterisk by there. I give a little bit of indicator that you can see a bit of power coming out of it. Last one here, Bark Knuckles, another reasonably powerful one. This does a lot, right? It's a +1/+1 for 2 mana. It gives Brash. That's a little tough to see just with the icon on there. And then it also has the strike ability to add a coin to your hand. And so, again, another one that has a lot of stuff really tied into it. If you can imagine, say, putting this onto Action, and Action getting the equip generating an ability, him being stronger, him then attacking, being a little meatier and getting good quick attacks in, and then also generating coins in the hand. This is one of those cards that really does a whole lot. It doesn't really give a whole lot up front, but it kind of wins you the game very slowly, and it's very tough to kind of recognize that happening. And so I'm curious to see how strong this one plays out and how much credence we give to the brash ability. And then just looking at it from the standpoint of it being kind of a 1 mana equipment or even a 0 mana equipment, depending on how many strikes you get, is definitely an interesting proposition. And so it's kind of tough to evaluate how good the coins are going to be and how much we can build around them, given that we haven't seen the entirety of the set. But the Bark Knuckles does strike me as a slightly above average power level card, to where if we think Pocket Picker is exceptional, Mad Old Babs not that great, got Bark Knuckles somewhere in the middle, in between, but a little closer to Pocket Picker than it is to Old Babs. And then our last set of cards here, we got Knuckle, Mako, whatever we're calling that one, and Bull. With this, it's an interesting effect, but I don't think I'm really impressed with it. And so you have the 2-mana Knuckle, a 2/1 elusive for 2. You summon it, you get a copy of Mako in hand. Mako, a 4/4 overwhelm for 4. You play Mako, you get Bull in hand. Bull is a 6/6 for 6 with Brash, and when you summon it, you rally. And so it's just like a very expensive sequence of cards, and that's fine if we're going to be playing coins and spending like 18 mana in a turn. You can look to these very high value and expensive plays, but I'm not really impressed with the output that you get out of these. The units are all understated on their own and don't do anything particularly impressive. I don't really want any of these units outside of Bull, being a 6-mana 6/6 that rallies. And so I don't see a lot out of these. Where I think we're going to have to get some space out of this is kind of doubling up and getting a lot of and factor, as to where you're playing Knuckle, you're playing some kind of plunder ability or something, so the elusive is relevant, and then you have some kind of discard ability, so you can just discard away the extra fleeting unit and you get some value that way. Or we're playing with discard and we're playing with coins, and so we have to just have like that and in the middle, right, to where we aren't just playing Knuckle in a coins deck, we have to be doing coins and something else, or we have to be playing, discard Jinx and something else. It's just not enough saying, okay, it's turn 10, I'm playing this chain of units. Or even if you have some kind of inventive way to give each piece of this -1 cost, so we're playing Knuckle for 1, Mako for 3, and Bull for 5, I don't feel like that's a particularly good deal either. But you do have to give a little bit of credence to these. They have 3 separate cards. You have a way that's good early, good mid-game, good late game. I shouldn't say good, something to do, right? And it's a way to come out and spend your mana. And so I don't really find myself impressed with these, but I am willing to admit there is some potential for power here. All right, so to go back to the deck, Fiora Vayne, this is one of the decks I had a good bit of success with right as the 4.2 patch came out. This is one of the initial decks we put together to make a bit of usage of the blocking Badger Bear, and I feel like it's going to be a nice one to kind of cycle back to right here at the end of the season. We had another reason for wanting to play this. I don't remember what it was. I feel like it involved us wanting to play Aatrox somewhere else in a best-of-3 format, and if we were playing Aatrox and not teaming him up with Vayne. It was something like that, right? I don't entirely remember, but this was a deck I was quite happy with, and it was a deck that played fantastically into the 4.2 meta, where we were seeing an absolute ton of elites, and then we were also seeing a lot of stuff like Nora Braum, which just puts a whole bunch of units on the board but doesn't have a lot of really good removal. And so the ideas with this deck are kind of twofold. We are looking to, number one, take advantage of the Darkin Harp. The Darkin Harp giving us the quick attack, using the quick attack challengers to come in and control the board. So the big way to control the boards with quick attack challengers are either going to be Fiora for the OTKs, or they're going to be with the Quinn Bird, the Blinding Assault, so that we can get multiple quick attack challenges in the same turn. So we have a lot of really powerful board control stuff with our challengers. We have these equipment between the Harp and the Aegis to protect them, and we can usually build up pretty big boards from that point forward. The next thing that this deck was looking to do outside of the really big quick attack challenges or the Fiora OTKs was to hopefully punish our opponent with our 4 health units. And so we have Fiora, we have the blocking Badger Bear, We have the Combat Cook typically coming down with about 4 or 5 health once he improvises, and then the Blood Cursed Harpy as another big unit. And so this was here to punish a lot of the damage-based removal. So if your opponent is playing a P&Z based removal deck, their removal typically does 2 or 3 points of damage. So if your opponent is playing Jace with the Shock Blasts, he has a tough time killing your dudes with Shock Blast if you have a 2-4 health units on the board. And so we were looking to really just get this fat collection of stats down to help challenge out the opposing removal spells, make them a little bit worse, get our card advantage from our opponent needing to spend 2 removal spells to take down 1 unit. And so, this is what we're going to do battle with today. We'll see if we can't do a little bit of ladder climbing here at the end of the season. I did notice that Ruben Zoo posted out on Twitter that they made a little bit of a whoopsies releasing the LP changes early. I couldn't quite tell, I should say, if he was entirely happy with how the changes went out. It sounded like they weren't full. The full amount of LP changes hadn't been completely released. But he did make note of a thing I've been bitching about here recently in terms of the competitive space, as to where it feels like there's a very heavy element towards the top end, right? The people that are good enough to kind of come out and qualify for Worlds. And then I feel like the rewards track gives you a pretty good space for people getting ready to kind of dip their toes into Constructed. I know there's a lot of heavy competitive elements to it, like getting buys into the big Runeterra Opens, but at the end of the day, it feels like it's a way for, kind of like a Friday Night Magic kind of event. And so I wasn't super impressed with that. And the space I'm kind of trying to bring a bit of notice to is if you find yourself hitting to Masters and then feeling like you don't have anything to do. And I think that Ruben Zoo really kind of hit home with that as well, in the sense that that's what the LP changes were looking to do, is it feels like there's just if you get up to about 150 LP, there's a big space for that 150 LP and higher, and then everybody else just sits at 0. And so the current changes to the system were looking to kind of clean that up a little bit. But here, we'll see what we get to do. Opponent did get a little bit shut down on his turn. We got both of our units with Tough, kind of canceling the Katarina ability. He doesn't really want to play Katarina this turn, but I'm going to try and bait it a little bit. And so if we can get Katarina off of the board before she gets into a combat and returns to hand, that's going to be pretty good. And I want to see if he's going to really invest in adding Katarina just to pick up the Blade's Edge to kill Valor, as that feels like a pretty heavy commitment he doesn't want to make. All right, Caustic Riff and Mystic Shot. Not bad. We at least have our protected bird hanging out, but lose 2 of our dudes along the way. It's not that bad, though. We still have a pretty reasonable curve. We have the Vayne we can load up with the Panapane. Then next turn we can drop the Blood Cursed Harpy and look to give it quick attack, which makes it quite challenging for this damaged-based removal deck to take down. I say the intern took credit for the stuff I said and ran it up the flagpole. It's something we talked about during the times of Expedition, was the intern, and that he was free and welcome to just take all of my ideas and send them up the flagpole. One of my valued few numbers of listeners taking the credit for their own, sending it on up. More than happy to assist. All right, let's get this rolling in here. We got our Blood Cursed Harpy on board. Quite tough for this opposing deck to remove. He would like to be able to block the Harpy with a House Spider and then put a Disintegrate or something in front of it. But with the Harpy getting quick attack, he's really forced to go after it with spells. And then the return to play ability is quite strong. It's a bit unfortunate that we're getting close to turn 8, and it would be nice to attack with Striatu, but this is a pretty reasonable unit, and there's a non-zero chance that we'll get to, say, lose our Broadwing, put the equipment back onto the Harpy, bring back the Striatu to hand before the Harpy dies into the opposing removal spells. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. And then if you're not familiar with the interactions with Tumble, if it's our opponent's attack token, and we tumble a scout unit, that counts as a scout attack, and we'll get a rally after that. And so, really scary unit for our opponent on their next turn, because we're most likely going to be attacking with some of our friends. I don't know about you, but I do like attacking with my friends. So we'll see what we can do here. Interesting Lord Broadmane. I think we're stuck still just swinging in with Vayne. She's going to get popped by a Ravenous Flock or something. Oh, we just get to take down the Broadmane? That's good. I'm not super worried about cheapening up this tumble, right? We have plenty of mana to be spending for the rest of the game, and so it's not that big of a deal. And now we do have the Pot of Pain in hand, so we can consider, say, tumbling the Harpy and then equipping the Pot of Pain so we get the Striatu back in our hand. And then we can use the Striatu to do some card draw, try to finish off the game. Feel pretty good about it. So let's see. Give up on the quick attack at this point. See if he's able to take down the bird before we can swap out the equipment. And then again, we'll get a rally off of this and some more attacks afterwards. All right, good stuff. GG. Taking him down. Not a bad day. Not a bad day. Opponent says, "Oh, Bust, you bringing the 4 healthers and all the toughs at me? That's not good for my 1 damages." That's not that good. All right, this one should be more of a challenging matchup for us, though. I haven't played against this dumb deck in a long time, and be sure whenever you're up against something like this Anivia deck to call it dumb. if you're not familiar with what's happening here, this is a Soul Cleave deck, and so they're going to try and play a bunch of Soul Cleaves on Anivia. Then they'll play the Rekindler to get more Anivias, and then if they haven't won the game at that point, they'll start playing the Harrowings, and so they tend to just have this big mountain of removal. But we don't have anything to do. This is a bit of a disaster of an opener. I mean, I guess we'll play the thing so we don't just run out of stuff to do, but I would have to say our win rate at this point is probably around 2%. This is just an absolute disaster in terms of a game sequencing, just not having anything to do up to this point. Plays so well into the opposing game plan. All right, so I'll load up with the Pan of Pain here. It's not a spectacular equipment. We did give up on the Overwhelm, but I feel like we need to just have a little bit of protection with this. We can't have our opponent just playing a bunch of damage-based removal right away and killing the Combat Cook. And so he gets, a little bit of protection in this space. Now, the new one is we do have a Riposte in hand for our Fiora, and so we can look to just play Fiora and then try and keep her repostable, but I suspect she's just going to be the target of a vengeance, and so I'm not ultra worried about her. We're not going to really be pushing for OTKs with this Fiora. All right, send in the attack, see what happens. Harsh Winds. That's not bad. I'd much rather see Harsh Winds land on these units as opposed to landing on our Blood Cursed Harpy. This is our hopeful path to victory in this game. Gotta have something go right here, and that's the way to do it. So where are we at? We're at the 6 mana turn. It's like, how ignorable is this Anivia? I think we can put an Aegius onto Fiora. It's just going to let our units soak up this Anivia shot. Don't want her to die just yet. And then we're going to look to add the Harpy to the board. So the thing we're going to have to note is once we've added the Harpy, is we're going to have to try and take this spiderling down. I don't want to just make our big attack with the Harpy and have the opponent block it with a rando 1-1. So we're going to have to look to fish fight this thing. So we'll use Fiora. There's not much difference between the opponent vengeancing Fiora and opponent vengeancing the combat cook. I'm fine to just send in the Fiora. It's not that big of a deal. Just, I don't care what happens. I want that unit gone. All right, well, nothing we can do about that one. I was going to say, is he just thinking to outright block with the Nivea? It's a real. I mean, that's something he can most certainly do. Not something I want to see, but possibility there. And then it feels like with the way this is going, if he's like banking up into Buried in Ice or banking up into the Harrowing, we're just going to lose anyways. And so I think we just need to throw everything down onto the board and hope opponent just doesn't have it. If we ever get into this space to where opponent hits us with a Buried in the Ice next turn, we can add Striatu, but the game's probably done. All right, we'll add in the old combat cook. We are in this space to where we can hook a Nivea with Fiora and it won't die. So we can look to actually punch in a bunch of damage on the round. Not the case now that he's avalanched, but with Avalanche, that means he can't hit us with any of the big removal spells next turn. So what's this even do? Puts the damage onto Anivia, which is annoying, but only kills off the Castaway. And so I think we just have to let him do his combos. So close. So close to that lethal. If we'd been in a spot to where we could say riposte the Blood Cursed Harpy and have it hit twice for 9, would have been huge. But let's see. With the way this sequenced, he's probably just going to rekindle us now. Ooh, Cataclysm was huge though. That counts as the scout attack for our Blood Cursed Harpy, so we should get another set of attacks this turn. Oh, snap, fam. If he rekindlers, this game should be done. Let's go big. Nothing wrong with going big, right? Oh shit, you know what's wrong with this? Is we can't Cataclysm anymore. It's like we did have it lined up to where we could look to Cataclysm the egg, but now that it's gone, we don't have access to that kind of thing. Shit. Let's see if he adds another dude. He's only got 2 mana at this point. Well, I guess we'll have to give up on that angle, and at least we are repping lethal with the Blood Cursed Harpy, so it may be able to pull something off here. I mean, if he's stuck playing a Harsh Winds to get this Blood Cursed Harpy down, then that's a win, and if he's having to play shit like Vengeance, then that's a definite win, because it takes a lot of work to get this Harpy off of the board. We might have actually just taken this one down. You lose with Vengeance, bruh. Nice. Oof. Oof. I don't know, man. We were calling that one a 2%er, but it felt a lot easier than it should have. That was wild. I did not expect the game to go that well. Just taking so long with doing absolutely nothing, it tends to really fail with what we're playing here. All right, into the next one. Up against Zillion. This should be the Time Bomb deck. And so I'm not really amped about Blinding Assault here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. Now, if our game plan is to have a 1 health quick attacking scout unit, there's just way too many options coming out of the Zillion deck to take that down with the Mystic Shots and Caustic Things and Time Bombs, Time Bomb being the big one. I don't really want to count on that small unit doing anything. These Badger Bears, though, I'm ready for you to do stuff. I'll count on you, friend. I'll count on you. Oh, I hope Fallen Feline gets rotated so much. I saw that they did print a new host of predict cards coming out of the new set, and I just hate this thing so much. So many of these games just come down to whether or not they cycle into the crystal, and I just think it's a poor design. We see now they're starting to add stuff like what is he that the Shurima thing that shuffles level 2 champions to the bottom of your deck. I'm pretty confident I'm going to hate that as well. But it feels like the champions are at least a little bit more interactable, as to where that's not what you get out of these. So we'll see. We'll see. See if we can't just sit around and bitch about it. Something I'm good at. Hey, Bust, what are you good at? Bitching about children's card games. That's right near the top of my skill set. Right near the top. Hey, Bust, what'd you do this weekend? Not much. Sat around, bitched about some children card game for hours on end. It was a, it was a pretty productive day, Pretty productive day. This is fine. We'll go ahead and take this. I'm not really worried about any of the damage coming out of the opposing deck. I'm looking to get the Darkin Harp down, and then next turn I want to play the Aegis. And so, if that's the angle we're looking to take, maybe we just have to look towards a fish fight instead. Let's do this. Let's lead in with the... Well... Let's stop and ponder this for next turn. If we're going to have 5 mana, if we spend all of our mana now, we'll have 5 mana next turn. That just leaves us with a riposte. Otherwise, we're looking to... I think I just want to get the Aegis down. Maybe we should have blocked here. That's close. I do like our ability to come in and hook this Zillion, though. That's where I'm leading with the Harp. We'll see if we find a better target for the Harp. Maybe... We look to I was thinking, well, we're just going to harp Gerald if we have to, but this should still be good enough. He's really low on mana. Our Badger Bear is reasonable. Hooking in Zillion isn't super high valued, right? He hasn't done a whole lot, although I would assume with double imperfection at this point, he's probably just copied a ton of time bombs into his deck, and so... getting rid of the Zillion, not the worst. He's got another one. So we'll see how deep he goes with the time bombs. I'm pretty interested in just dropping a fish fight on him now, but we can add in the combat cook. Combat reel can be important. Giving up on the overwhelm is kind of meh, but we're in a pretty good spot for this mana. Fine to try and clear this stuff out. If he's got the -2 attack predict thing, that's okay. I would prefer to see it kind of come down now before we try and fish fight Zillion. Sure. Let's try and get him out of here. I know he hasn't gotten close to the time bombs at this point, but this deck has a really hard time winning if it doesn't have access to the champion. Alright, so now we got this Harpy with the combat reel. Give us a little bit more mana, so we should be able to attack here, get that second mana, then with the second mana play a Darkin Harp, load up Gerald, take down whatever he needs to take down. Not a bad spot. Not a bad spot, I tell you. All right, so he's oh boy, Hexite Crystal. At least it's a little bit late at this point. It's not nearly as impressive at this stage of the game. Okay, so we'll still have our Harpy on board. The rest of our back line still hanging out. Got the harps to drop on Giral. All seems reasonable. What are you bringing now? Second Hexite Crystal. Did he really just naturally draw it and then... wow. Yeah, he naturally drew it and then got to make copies of it. It's pretty strong. Still feels like we're in a pretty good spot, though. We can just drop Striatu on board next turn if we want. So he's got access to a lot of strength. We don't have to completely worry about the crystals at that point. See how much he really wants to stare down double Striatu. I don't think we're at, like, super lethal range, right? We're at 10. Feels like 10 should be pretty safe. Although the bummer here is we're not going to be able to get a kill next turn. I guess, like... I guess there might be a world to where he lets us open attack, but I can't imagine it. Alright, how many crystals coming in? Double crystal and a mystic shot. Okay. Then he'll get to attack for 2. Time bomb will take us to 3. He gets to draw a card next turn. Doesn't seem amazing for us. Gotta fade quite a bit here. Not even lethal with our friend Striatu. What a sad day. What a sad day. So here we have a couple of options in the sense that I think we want to drop Vayne first, and then that'll make the tumble a little bit cheaper. The mana is actually pretty relevant at this point, and so I don't want to be tumbling Striatu. If we have to, it's okay. But we want to be playing the Castaway, we want to be playing the Combat Cook and hitting Scout, and then we want to tumble off our Scout unit so we get that secondary attack behind. So we'll see what we can do. The first one here doesn't find it. Trying to decide, I think I'll go with Pot of Pain, since it lets the unit survive a Hexite Crystal. I mean, I haven't been keeping track of how many he's had here, but he's played about 1 million of them. Might just be dead at this point. Needs a second time bomb. No scout. A little unfortunate. I know you've been stealing my plates, Captain. Hey, they patch up the hole. Okay. Man. It's tough, right? You realize what happened to us there. You typically get the opportunity to just bitch about Hexite Crystal because you predict for it and find it for free. But in that game, it was actually worse. He naturally drew it, right? It didn't turn up in a predict. If it turns up in a predict, it just goes up to your hand. So he played the thing, and then somewhere on either turn 2, turn 3, or turn 4, he naturally drew the crystal and then was able to make 6 copies of it. That's a little bonkers that things can play out like that, but somebody was having fun. I don't know who that person was. I guess it was opponent since it wasn't us, but somebody loves that mechanic. It was a very, very well designed card. But we had some options in there. We took an extra 4 damage off of that unit when we decided to not block it, and so as you're getting that overwhelming advantage on the board, we that may have been enough to turn the game around, and so. Remember, you should probably do most of your complaining about luck, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened there, right? Opponent just lucked us down. I'm pretty sure. Never mind the part to where we could have blocked and prevented some damage and stuff. I'm pretty sure he just lucked us right out of that game. Alright, this is fine. We're up against Victor Karma, some kind of weird Seraphine deck. That's fine. I'm not real worried about what this Forge Worker's doing. And it feels like in that previous spot, we're just trading, right? We're getting to trade a Broadwing for a high note, and it's not as bad as it feels. I know we would prefer to take down the Forge Worker, but it's not that terrible. This will be kind of an interesting turn. Like, he has played Seraphine, but he's only playing one copy, so it would be nice to get to remove her from the board. But she doesn't do anything real for a long time, so it's very tempting to just try and hook in the Forge Worker, so we still get our free attacks with Vayne and such into the Seraphine. We'll see. We got the Scout on the Combat Cook. I'm fine enough to just trade him with the Forge Worker. It makes the opposing board suck quite a bit, but it starts to get us into the space where we can now tumble the Scout equipment, get that attack on the next turn, and we're really close to flipping Vayne. So getting free tumbles is pretty nice. You know, I'm not complaining about it. Ugh. Okay. I will complain about that a little bit. Complain about that one a little bit. So do we ever want to just go ahead and play the Scout equipment and then attack with Vayne? It's tempting. What are you even thinking about here, dude? Like, you take this trade 100% of the time. This is the easiest trade 2023. Here's what you think. Am I going to let him just attack with Combat Cook again? No, you're not. And so just put your unit in front. He can decide if he wants to play a removal spell here. I guess that's legitimate, but you're never not blocking. So right now, do we want to rake our Vayne? Maybe it's okay. Go ahead and get that additional attack in. She's a reasonable tumble target next turn as well. All right, let's think on this a little harder. Here she comes. It's not a bad spot, right? Seems like it's going okay. Look at that prismatic arc-like Vayne. So much happening there. The combat picture looks way more interesting than the enlarged picture. I'm bringing the hard-hitting analysis out here for you. He's going to gruesome theater, sure. So we can still get a 1-mana tumble this turn if we want. You can look to, say, play Broadwing, play Vayne, and then tumble for 1 mana. That all feels pretty reasonable. See what he does if he keeps passing. Like, the Vayne is most certainly coming in. Then the question becomes, do we want to tumble Vayne or do we want to tumble the Broadwing? And I think we're just leaning towards tumbling the Vayne. If she gets, like, if it gets denied, that's still a pretty fantastic turn for us. So let's see how that plays out. Alright, dude, here it comes. Pick an ally, pick an equipment. Get them big scout attacks in there. Gotta have something here, right? This is just so brutal for opponent if they don't have anything. We get the Vayne attack, then we get to re-attack with everybody else, and then open with Vayne. That's so much damage. Purifying bolts, bro. Interesting. And then he plays Victor at the end of the day. Like, why wouldn't you play Victor and just see if you hit tough or something? That's odd that he adds him to the board after combat. Well, alrighty then. So he's got to block at this point, right? You can't count on your removal spells. I guess you could have like a concussive palm, and that be a reasonable way to try and stop Vayne, but if this attack goes through, then you just lose the game. So you at least have to be putting Victor forward at this point. This is going to be a pretty strong riposte if he's just playing burn spells. If we even want to do it. That's interesting. Like, when you have your opponent so low, and then we have the blocking Badger Bear in hand, we can realistically find ourselves in a spot to where, say he blocks Vayne with Victor, and then plays a Mystic Shot, kills the Vayne, then we follow up with Badger Bear, we have the lethal with the 4 damage, we have a hook with the Broadwing, and then we can still look to kill with Tumble. I think that's the space we're going to be looking towards here. If we play Riposte, we can't Tumble. But he's only got 2 mana now. You can't play... I guess you could play Steel Tempest. Steel Tempest would be awful. Ah, he's out of mana now. GG. Got him. Dumb decks. Are they rotating Seraphine yet? I'm so ready for these dumb cards to be gone. Just rotate Ionia, okay? Ionia should be the faction of playing fun cards like Greenglade Duo and Irelia in the tokens deck. This is bullshit with Seraphine. Just get that right out of the game. Get it right out of here. Did we lose LP on that win? How the fuck does that happen? I thought we were at like 115 or so. All right. All fun things must come to an end, though. Our last battle of the competitive beta season is gonna be a nightmare. This is a really challenging matchup against Zed Hecarim. We don't line up against their game plan particularly well, so I'm suspecting that we just get domed for the last one of the season. But hey, man, we're gonna give it a shot. You can do interesting things against this deck with Fiora, in the sense that they play a lot of units that have to attack. And if you have to attack into a Fiora, you do have a pretty good chance of just dying. And so we do got that going for us, man. We got an opportunity. So let's see what comes in. I'm not really wanting to add Vayne because she just dies to Zed. And so I'm never hooking this Boisterous Host. We just need time here for this game. So I'm going to leave all my blockers back. We'll look to add Fiora to the board next turn. But just taking down this host with the Broadwing is not particularly advisable. But we got a real strong hand here now. Very real chance we can present OTKs with Fiora. We can protect her with the Aegis. We have good blocks and stuff here. We have the Cataclysm and the Fish Fight. She can be a monster here. All right, so let's do some not dying. Again, I don't think we're going to win this game via combat damage. We'll see what opponent does here, right? He is in this kind of nice spot for him to where he doesn't really have to add any units next turn, so we may not get a good attack with Fiora. But I think this is still lining up okay. Ooh, a riposte. Right, it's very real for him to just say, okay, well, I'll take 8 and pass. Do we ever just not let him play units? It's like, it's so tough in this space. Like, Fiora is so close to just outright winning the game, but most of his units are ephemeral, right? And so he's going to have these like real turds of units just hanging out, and then you only get that one shot in the middle of combat. But let's try and take our shot, man. There's this. We'll add the Aegis back to Fiora, and now we're in a space to where if we get to like Cataclysm off one of his units, then we should be pretty close to the lethals. Oh, we can't Aegis? Already played it once? That's okay. I don't think this deck plays Vengeance, right? That's the new scary thing that we could find ourselves running into. Let's see, we'll take our riposte here. Then we can look to Cataclysm into the Ghostly Band. Get the fourth kill. That would be pretty cool. Do we want to be a little bit safer, though, and then just play the Darkin Harp? Like, if we Cataclysm our Fiora, and then he's got a... if we Cataclysm Fiora, and then he's got a Twin Disciplines, then we're just going to lose the game. So let's send her in, see what he adds. We can threaten the lethal here with Vayne, right? This might do it. If he plays like a Glimpse from Beyond on his Butler, then the Fiora attack still goes through and just hits face. And boom, we did it. We did it, fam. Our last game, our last battle of Runeterra 1.0. Is that what we're calling things here? We managed to take down victory. Good stuff. And so, again, we can pull this up, talk about it a little bit more. We played against a wide variety of decks today, but I think we got a good cover off on what this deck is looking to go up against, right? You want to go against opposing decks that don't have a lot of interactivity. So you're looking at decks like Elites, things like Nora Braum, any deck with Braum in it. You're able to get pretty decently in front of, and then you can also hold your own against damage-based removal decks. And so if your opponent's playing Annie Ezreal, it's not a super ideal matchup, but if you're thinking of all of our 4 health units and then running them into Mystic Shot style removal, I think the Seraphine Karma deck would be a little bit more of a better example there, as to where they may have some stuns, but they're really playing like high notes and Mystic Shots and Aftershocks and various Tellstones and stuff, and they don't have things like Disintegrate or Vengeance to just be a kind of catch-all big removal spell. And so you get a lot of power there, and then these quick attack challenges are quite strong. You have a lot of late game with the Darkin Harp and the Blood Cursed Harpy. All around pretty fun and fantastic deck. And so, good stuff. I had fun with that. I hope you did too, because that will do it for us today. And so hope everyone enjoyed the video. Hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way, and you had a good time watching. So this is Bust, and we thank you for being here.